Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Soccer Queens podcast, where we discuss everything female athlete performance training. I have such a treat for you today, and I'm going to be talking with my friend Rachel Nuzzles, who I actually knew when I coached in Maryland, but it's funny because we never actually met when I lived there. And we met last year in person when she was in Disney World for a soccer tournament. So I'm really excited to talk to Rachel today about her Division 1 college career and also her going on to play pro and what led up to all that and what it takes to play at a high level. So Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited for this conversation and I'm just fascinated to learn how your soccer journey started. So let's just start from the beginning. When did you start playing and when did you start to get serious about soccer and know you wanted to play in college?
Yeah, so I did start, at around 3 years old, and it seems really young. My brother was 2 years older than me, so he started at 5, and I kind of just was there because my parents were dropping him off at practice, and I would just putz around and kind of run around with them and kick around. Um, but I had a really good coordination with my feet at a young age, so my parents were like, "Okay, we'll put you in soccer." I was really developed as a young child. So when I was 10 years old, I was 140 pounds, 5'7". I was very developed, had big, strong legs. I was very muscular. So I always played up around 3 to 4 years just because I literally was 3 or 4 ages bigger than I was um, naturally. So started playing up a few years. I was a forward all my life. I started getting really serious probably around 11. um, I started, you know, traveling with all different my club. I was on ODP. I was on the regional team. I was on the U.S. national team for the youth. When I was 12, I was on the U14 women's national team. So I just kind of started playing and diving in. I had a personal trainer as a young kid. I had a nutritionist. I had a strength and conditioning coach. So I always say that I was kind of like bred to play soccer, but my parents didn't have the resources where, I did take care of my body. I had really good food. I had great sleep. And I had great support around me and great teammates and coaches. So that kind of led me up into my college years. So when I was in ninth grade, I did commit to Wake Forest on a full scholarship. Um, that was before the rule where you can commit, in your, I guess, going into your junior year. Um, so I had 164 full ride offers. I was the number one recruit for the 2010 class. So I did narrow down my options to UNC, Virginia, Notre Dame, and Wake Forest. And after touring those schools, I was very scared to go to Notre Dame because of the weather, but I loved Notre Dame. UVA, Steve Swanson was an absolutely amazing coach. I had him at a regional event, and he was wonderful, but I didn't really care for the campus. And UNC was just too much blue, so much baby blue. And then Anson wanted me to be a starting left back, and that was going to be a big transition for me since I played forward my entire life. So Wake Forest was kind of the warmer option of the South, the private school, great academics. So I chose Wake Forest.
Wow, that's super interesting. So the first thing I want to unpack is you said you started getting serious when you were 11 years old. What was going on before you turned 11? Were you playing rec? Were you doing travel at a really young age, or were you just kind of exploring the game, exploring other things? Like, what were you doing up until that point?
Yeah, so I did. I was on a travel team. I probably started around 9 or 8 on a travel team. But I did softball for a season. I did winter basketball for a season. I was dabbling in other options just to, my parents always said, like, you should be doing different things. But when I played basketball, I was fouling everyone because I didn't know you couldn't like shield them. So I was like shoving everyone. And then when I did softball, I was just so much bigger than everyone. So I kind of got told by the coach, like, hey, this is not really, fair for the kids. Cause I would just whack the ball. I was just so big, kids are like so little. So I kind of did that. But I was always doing soccer. So that kind of was like my path. So I did dabble in other sports, but soccer was, I was still was doing that throughout the year.
So it sounds like you had a lot of natural talent in soccer, but you mentioned that you did have a strength coach when you were young. How did that contribute to your game?
Big time. I think that's one area still to this day, and it is the age of information. And, I tell every kid that comes in here, like, it doesn't have to be with me. You just need to be doing strength and conditioning to get stronger, to work on any imbalances, to work on your mobility, to work on your change of direction, staying healthy. Um, that was kind of not as popular back in the day. And my mom would always kind of get nervous by the word strength. But it's just, we're in this field, it's learning how to hinge correctly and squat and push and pull and press. But I did do a lot of, ACL kind of preventative things. And I was working on, my hamstrings, my posterior chain was a lot weaker. So I was working on those things. And when I was running, I was extremely fast and explosive. So that was one of my, I guess, my talents and skill was, it didn't matter if you were 10 yards ahead of me, I would run past you. Endurance wise, no, I was not great in endurance, but in a sprint, I would beat you in a sprint. But yeah, it definitely helped me big time. I think looking back now, I could have probably even lifted heavier or done things um, differently, if you will. It just wasn't, the age of information then. So looking back at programs now that I do versus what I was doing, it wasn't similar.
Mhm. Now, how did strength play a role when you got on campus at Wake Forest and you're in that grueling preseason? How did that help you during that time?
It did help me, but it also, I guess it, how do I say this? I tore my ACL twice on the same knee, my freshman year and senior year in college. Our preseason was, just running into the ground. I didn't pass my 6.5 minute mile test, but I did pass our beat test because I can sprint. And I would have to wake up and do morning breakfast club and do all that extra running. And then I had to do the practices on top of the lift, on top of film. So it was it was draining. And I had 6 girls within 2 months all tear their ACL on my team. So we all were rehabbing together, where I did at least have like a close knit unit of people that I can like vent to and talk with. But looking back on how it was programmed, they were just breaking us down until we got hurt. And I started seeing a pattern where it was just every year, multiple girls were tearing their knees. And it was just no rhyme or reason for the amount of running we were doing. It just wasn't naturally a good program. But if I were not to do any of the strength that I previously did, I think I would have been in a lot more trouble.
Mhm. It's so interesting you say that with the preseason that back then it was a lot of running us into the ground. And I can say the same at Hopkins. We had 2 ACLs one preseason, but it was similar to yours. Like we would run the mile test and then have like 2 a days, sometimes 3 a days. But now people are starting to get smarter and be like, look, like, yes, it's good to be strong, but we also need to manage that load. And I get concerned with the load management side when we're talking about youth right now and some of them doing over 10 months a year of organized sport and not truly having an off season to prepare. And you work with a lot of girls. So what are some of the things you're seeing? What are some of the issues that you're seeing as far as injuries and burnout and anything else?
I would say I see mostly burnout. And I think it's these clubs are, pushing, I guess, the better that you are, the better you need to be playing 3 practices a week and then 2 games on the weekend. There's not enough recovery in that at all. I see. I do have my younger kids will have more, like they'll sprain their ankles, things like that. And then my older kids will have more muscular injuries like hammy pulls, groin, quads. Um, and knock on wood, I get very few ACLs, but I'll have like a call saying, oh, my daughter tore a knee in North Carolina in a tournament, where they're just playing so many games and there's not enough rest, or they're not doing enough strength training to withstand the load of what they are doing. But most of the time, even if a kid, I'll tell a parent like, hey, what did they do this week? And they'll be, oh, she had practice every day this week. We want to get an extra practice. And I'll say, I think she should take off today and do nothing. She needs to rest. So these kids, I also try to teach them, how to balance correctly your schedules. And, this should definitely be in a little accessory to just help clean up things. But they need to be resting. And I think my issues was complete overuse. I think that's why my body broke down. I think that's why I hurt my knee, because we didn't rest at all. It was just go, 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 preseasons, 2-a-days, running, and like no recovery.
Yeah, that recovery piece is so important. And I think people think that kids are really resilient and have unlimited energy, but eventually it gets to a point where it becomes diminishing returns. And I like what you said about how, like, you as a skills and performance coach, you let them know, look, you don't need to come into my facility today. You
Yeah.
can rest. And that's fantastic because I know a lot of people that be like, no, like we'll train, like let's get the session in, it'll be fine. But that stuff accumulates over time. So I'm really glad that you said that, and that's why I love your work so much. Now, are you doing a lot of stuff with nutrition with your girls? How are you starting to get them into good habits with that?
Yeah, I do have a nutritionist that I do recommend if people really want to kind of dive in and work on the macros and what they should be eating. Everyone has like a different dietary need. So I'll ask kids all the time. And sometimes, it's food for people and diet, if you will, the word diet. People think you have to diet. It's more of a lifestyle. It's how you're eating. What are you eating? But kids will skip breakfast. They're eating a bagel for lunch, and then dinner they're eating just like Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, that's not going to fuel your body. That's not benefiting you. And, how's your energy? How's your sleep? How are you in school? How are you on the field? So I'll just kind of sneak in ways like, hey, maybe we need to eat more protein, or, more vegetables, or, hey, we need to be eating a breakfast, or even a shake, or just something where you're eating something. But yeah, this is the age too where kids, I have some kids that won't eat at all. So it's talking with them and their parents like, hey, we need a plan. This is affecting you more than just, on the outside level. It's internally not helping you if you don't eat. So I try to be a guide to these kids to know like, hey, you need to be eating, you need to eat well. These are some things you can eat, but hey, I'll send you to this great nutritionist that works with a ton of my athletes, that knows what to do. This is kind of like, a resource that you can use. They'll be more than willing to help.
So there's a lot of girls listening right now and they want to play in college or professionally. What advice would you give them to work towards getting to that level?
I would say they need a periodization kind of workout. They need to be doing strength, and I would honestly say they need to do more strength than soccer, because the soccer, I always view it as like a meal, and you have like your entree and you have your two sides. We view like our whole entire entree and our side as soccer, and then we'll sprinkle in, they'll say like speed work. Like they need to be doing lifting, they need to be doing um a lot of, I think the mental side is massive too. I have kids that will completely break down if they don't do well, or they look at their parents really quick if they don't do well. They need to be able to be confident in themselves and understand they will make mistakes and have that strong mental mindset. And a lot of times I don't think clubs necessarily address that, but there's a lot of great books out there that you can read. And I luckily had some really wonderful coaches that helped me with that side. So I think the mental side is really important. I think being strong, a resilient athlete is important, working on any imbalances. I think they need to be doing strength, and having a coach that they trust that will look after them. not just break their bodies down just because they need them in the game or low on subs, things like that. But someone that will be committed in working hard, understanding that, hey, I need a day off, listen to their body. And of course, the academic side, you can't get into a school if you do not work on your grades or study or put time and effort into that. So I would say all those things combined is what will help you get onto that path.
As you were talking there, I was just thinking about the physical side of the game, and I totally agree. It's so important, and a lot of coaches will be like, "Well, you need to work on like skills and tactics," and I'm like, "Yes, that's a given. You can work on all of it. You should be the complete player." And I don't know if you watched the UNC UCLA final for the national championship, but the physicality in that game was another level, and the speed and the strength of those girls, it was just insane. And I watched some of the other Division 1 games. I watched Wake Forest, University of Maryland, a lot of the games this season, and that speed and strength is what really stood out. But at that level, everyone's skilled across the board. Everyone's like got that, and you just need to refine things, but it's really that speed and strength that makes the difference, and it makes those games really exciting to watch too. And I don't know if your girls watch a lot of college soccer, but some of the conversations I've had is they're not tuning into it, which is a problem because you need to know if you can handle that level. And I think it's critical girls watch soccer not every 4 years when the World Cup comes around.
No, I agree. I always tell my players like they need to be watching, and a lot of my younger players tactically don't know how to make like a through, like a run to get a through ball, or when to do an overlapping run, or timing of runs, or off a corner, just anything. And I ask them, I'm like, "Hey, do you watch soccer?" And they'll be like, "Sometimes," and I'll be like,
That
"What
means
do
no.
you?" Yeah, I mean, you could tell because they're not necessarily knowing how to do it on the field.
Mhm.
So I think that visual cue of watching and learning, that will definitely help. And just like what you said before with the strength and speed, you know, a lot of kids, if I had two kids next to each other and I'm like, you both are equally skilled, great at passing, great at shooting, you can use both feet, you're tactically smart, great soccer IQ. It's then at that level, who's stronger or who's faster? Who's going to get to the ball faster or hold off the person on the ball? Who's going to have more power on their strike due to having more, better mechanics, but also strength behind it? Um, so that's kind of the difference between what I see for the highest D1 athletes or school and programs versus the lower. It's not necessarily, sometimes it's the skill, but most of the time they have pretty decent skill. It's the speed of play and how fast or how aggressive and how strong they can be. And then that's kind of what you see where the top programs have like very dominant, strong women athletes. So um, I definitely think the speed and strength is a huge, huge part in that.
It is, and the speed itself improves your tactical game and being able to make those runs off the ball or win the counterattack. So it enhances the tactical and the technical side to some extent. So I'm glad that you said that it's so critical to get that edge in that physical performance. Now, one thing I see with you is you're an athlete for life. Even though you've stopped playing competitive soccer, you still really practice what you preach. And that's one thing with these young girls. It's like, look, we're teaching them to be healthy now for their sport, but this is a lifetime pursuit. So, how has your performance training in the past helped you now as a young woman running a business and just being able to live life in a vibrant way and a resilient way? How has it really contributed after soccer's ended?
I mean, it instilled those habits of, working on yourself, putting time and effort into you. Um, and I always pride myself, and I tell my little players, a lot of them will have, body issues or body, confidence about their body. They're like, I'm bigger than everyone, or I have big legs. And I'll say, like, does do I have big legs? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I'm like, means I'm like, I put a lot of time and energy into this, and all my workouts and all my running and all the time I put in. I was like, I'm proud of this, and I was like, you should be proud of that too. I was like, you're strong, and um, I think kids also need to see that too, is strong women, I always say lead women. And, um, it helped me instill, like, I still work out. I don't run as much. I do a lot of lifting. I get my heart rate up through the lifting. But I still lift throughout the week. I still have a pretty decent diet. I'll have, my treats, which I can, which is another thing that I tell kids. Sometimes they'll bring me some candy and I'll eat a chocolate and they're like, "You eat chocolate?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I eat chocolate. Like, what?" But kids need to see that. And, but no, it definitely helped me just continue to stay fit. I still enjoy the lifting part. I still get to play with my kids in soccer. So, it's still all around me. Yes, I'm not playing competitively anymore, but I'm still a part of the game. I'm still enjoying myself. And I'm still in a nice routine that fits my lifestyle now.
I love that. And I really want everyone to just follow up with you and just see all the amazing things you're doing in Maryland. So, where can everyone find you?
So I'm located in Ellicott City. I also have another location in Marriottsville. But if you go on my Instagram at Soccer by Rachel or my website, soccerbyrachel.com, you guys can reach out and then we can get you on the schedule. We do private, semi private, small group trainings, clinics, summer camps, team trainings. And we do, of course, the strength and conditioning as well.
Awesome. So it's a one-stop shop for everything soccer performance. So if you guys are in Maryland, in Ellicott City, my hometown, it's a great place. Definitely stop by Rachel's facility, and I'm going to include all of her links in the caption below, so be sure to check those out. Rachel, thank you for the conversation, and I'm sure everyone found it super helpful.
Of course. Thanks so much. I hope it helps.
See you guys next time.